Good morning, you're watching World News and I'm your host, Klaudia Czerwińska. On Tuesday evening, Donald Trump commented on the recent peace talks. Trump agreed with the idea of NATO troops being sent to Ukraine as part of a peacekeeping mission, as long as they're not American. The U.S. president also said he has the power to stop the fighting in Ukraine, while alleging it was Volodymyr Zelensky who started the war.
If we have a peace deal, I think having troops over there from the standpoint of Europe, we won't have to put any over there because, we're very far away. But having troops over there would be fine. I would not object to it at all. We're talking about this now, peace. We have either a ceasefire or a peace itself, and we're looking to do both. And I'm very disappointed. I hear that, they're upset about not having a seat. Well, they've had a seat for 3 years, and a long time before that. This could have been settled very easily. Just a half-baked negotiator could have settled this years ago. Without the loss of much land, very little land. Well, we have a situation where we haven't had elections in Ukraine, where we have martial law, essentially martial law in Ukraine, where the leader in Ukraine, I hate to say it, but he's down at 4% approval rating. And yeah, I would say that, when they want a seat at the table, you could say the people wouldn't the people of Ukraine have to say, it's been a long time since we've had an election. And I think I have the power to end this war. And I think it's going very well. But today I heard, we weren't invited. Well, you've been there for 3 years. You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal. I could have made a deal for Ukraine that would have given them almost all of the land, everything, almost all of the land, and no people would have been killed, and no city would have been demolished, and not one dome would have been knocked down.
And we're now going straight to our correspondent in Kyiv, Oz Chatterjee, who will tell us more about Donald Trump's controversial words. So, good morning, Oz. We've heard some very inflammatory statements from President Trump about blaming Volodymyr Zelensky for how things unraveled in Ukraine during those 3 years. What are the responses?
Well, we haven't had direct responses yet. However, these comments are going to go down particularly badly here in Kyiv. The first thing we should say is that as reporters, we need to accurately assess the words coming from Donald Trump. For a start, he said that Zelensky is on 4% approval rating. That is a lie. The last polls taken by the Kyiv Institute of Sociology put Zelensky on 52% approval rating, which is higher than the vast majority of European leaders at the very least. So Donald Trump is saying something that is simply untrue. He also blamed the Ukraine, or at least appeared to blame the Ukrainian leadership for starting the war, which is of course not true. The Russians started the war. I think reading between the lines is also important because the things that Donald Trump is saying about Zelensky, about the Ukrainian government, he's not saying about the Russian government. He's not criticizing the Russian government's authoritarianism. J.D. Vance isn't criticizing the lack of free speech in Russia. No, they're attacking their allies. They're attacking Ukraine, and often wholesale adopting Russian narratives and the Russian position on this war. So this is going to be causing great concern and alarm here in Kyiv, and I expect that we'll hear more throughout the course of the day in response to this.
Thank you so much. That was Oz Chatterjee reporting live from Kyiv. France is preparing to host another meeting on Ukraine on Wednesday. The guest list includes officials from countries that did not attend the emergency gathering convened in response to the Munich Security Conference. Reports indicate that the meeting will include leaders from Norway, Canada, the 3 Baltic states, the Czech Republic, Greece, Finland, Romania, Sweden, and Belgium. Yesterday's emergency meeting, attended by Poland and other major European players regarding Ukraine, followed the disappointing stance of the U.S. government on the issue. These French efforts are part of a broader European response to potential peace talks between Russia and the U.S. in Saudi Arabia, talks to which neither Europe nor Ukraine were invited. Asked after the press conference whether he will meet with Vladimir Putin before the end of the month, Trump replied that it is possible. Moving on now. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has held consultations with his European colleagues after meeting with the Kremlin's chief diplomat Sergei Lavrov in Saudi Arabia. In a call with foreign ministers from France, Germany, Italy and the UK, as well as the EU officials, Rubio shared details on the progress of the negotiations. According to the American State Department, officials participating in the call agreed to maintain close coordination in resolving the war in Ukraine. At the same time, EU leaders expressed their concern over the Donald Trump administration's approach to ending the conflict. EU countries were not involved in the negotiations in Riyadh, during which Rubio agreed to restore respective diplomatic missions in Washington and Moscow and appoint a team to negotiate an end to Russia's war in Ukraine. Following his visit to Poland, U.S. Special Representative for Ukraine and Russia, Keith Kellogg, will travel to Kyiv on Wednesday morning for a 3-day visit. While in Ukraine, Kellogg will meet with top Ukrainian state officials to discuss the most pressing issues. Diplomatic and military support, as well as potential pathways to peace, will be at the top of the agenda of the talks between the U.S. Special Representative for Ukraine and Russia, President Volodymyr Zelensky, and other Ukrainian officials. Kellogg's visit to Kyiv comes amid efforts by the U.S. to help end the war in Ukraine and mounting concerns in both Kyiv and EU countries that Ukraine might be sidelined from crucial negotiations, potentially jeopardizing the country's interests and security in the region. Overnight, Russia launched an airstrike on a residential district in Odessa in the south of Ukraine. The attack caused power, water, and gas cuts to 27 schools and kindergartens and some 500 apartment buildings. At the same time, several Russian drone waves attacked Kyiv, with Ukraine retaliating by targeting an oil refinery in the Russia's Samara region. According to the mayor of Odessa, the attack on the city left hospitals, schools, and other civilian infrastructure in a difficult situation. So far, there have been no reports of casualties and injuries in the aftermath. Overall, 250,000 people have been left without power and heating. Multiple Russian drones also attacked the Ukrainian capital, prompting the residents to head toward air raid shelters. Also overnight, Ukrainian drones attacked the Syzran oil refinery in Russia's Samara region. Residents reported 2 explosions and a fire burning at the facility. According to preliminary data shared by the Russian authorities, the attack caused no casualties or injuries, but the extent of the damage remains unknown. U.S. President Donald Trump has said he appreciates the European Union reducing its car tariffs, but the U.S. will, quote, straighten out its $350 billion trade deficit with the bloc. At the same time, Trump reiterated his claim that the EU-U.S. trade relations have been unfair towards Washington for a long time.
The EU had a 10% tax on cars, and now they have a 2.5% tax, which is the exact same as us. So already we've saved a tremendous amount. That would be great. If everybody would do that, then we'd all be on the same playing field. Because essentially what we're doing with the tariffs is, you know, they charge us, we charge them, same amount. And it's called reciprocal, actually. And whatever they charge us, we're charging them. And so the EU is... I appreciate that they did this, but, the EU has been very unfair to us. We have a deficit of $350 billion. They don't take our cars. They don't take our farm products. They don't take almost anything. They take very little. And we're going to have to straighten that out. And we will. I have no doubt about it.
In Serbia, a push for an interim government is gaining traction as a way to resolve the ongoing political crisis following a tragic railway roof collapse and widespread protests. However, the proposal faces opposition from the president, complicating the path forward.
Protests have been rocking Serbia since November.
I truly hope that one day this country of ours will become a normal country, that the institutions will start doing their job, and that I will not be forced to leave my country. It doesn't matter if the end is near or not. We are here until the end, and we will stand here every second. We are here to make this country a better place.
But the end might be near, as civil society is proposing a solution to the crisis.
The least painful way to overcome the current crisis in Serbia is to form an interim transitional government.
Although it is not a political party itself, Progress's proposal elicited support from opposition parties. In its view, a transitional government would meet 2 objectives.
First one is fulfillment of the conditions set out by the students. And the second would be organization of free and fair elections.
This is the first, I would say, most serious suggestion that is like somehow politically drafted.
Following a fatal railway station roof collapse in Novi Sad in November last year that killed 15 people, students initiated anti-government strikes, blaming the tragedy on corruption.
We put our personal ideologies aside because what we're doing here is bigger than all of that. We're trying to build a country.
One of the protesters' demands is the resignation of all those responsible for the tragedy, which led to Prime Minister Miloš Vučević's resignation and cabinet collapse. Elections or appointing a new prime minister to form a cabinet are the standard paths forward. Transitional government emerges as a third option, but is not the Serbian president's favorite.
There is no possibility of a transitional government.
Whether the transitional government will actually come to life remains to be seen, but continued protests could help.
Strong pressure from the inside, from the people, can basically make the ruling party accept a transitional government.
Stepping away from local pressure, Vučić was presented one of the highest Hungarian honors during a visit to Budapest. The country's Prime Minister Viktor Orban referred to Vučić as the champion of Balkan stability.
The government representatives and the president are actually asking their allies to back them up and to support them, and so they can, somehow establish this legitimacy that they lost at home.
Aside from the Prime Minister, the roof collapse and ongoing protests triggered the resignations of several other officials, including the mayor of Novi Sad, and spurred a crackdown on corruption, resulting in dozens of arrests. For TVP World, Sonja Gatabišćan.
Pope Francis has been diagnosed with bilateral pneumonia. According to a statement from the Vatican, his situation remains complex. The 88-year-old pontiff has been hospitalized since last week. He's receiving treatment for polymicrobial infections, which are both acute and chronic illnesses. All his public events will be canceled until Saturday. Doctors had prescribed complete rest for the Pope. The pontiff has had a record of lung-related diseases throughout his life. In what proved to be his final public speech, historian and Holocaust survivor Marian Turski called for courage in the face of conspiracy theories and genocidal hate. He passed away on Tuesday, aged 98, leaving one fewer survivor and witness of the Holocaust alive.
There has always been a small minority of us, those who went through all those selections and lived. That number was already very small, and those who lived to see freedom, there were really hardly any. So few, and now there is only a handful left. Let us not fear demonstrating the same courage today when Hamas attempts to deny the massacre of October 7th. Let us not be afraid of opposing conspiracy theories saying that all the evil of this world results from a plot started by some undefined social groups, and Jews are often included in this.
And so this very sad news marks the end of our news service, but please do stay tuned. We have Jonasz Rawinski with World Talks coming in just a moment.